Hello and welcome to Science. Today we're going to be doing about the spinal cord, and this will help you to fill in the 2F pack. So the spinal cord is really important. It connects the brain to the body. It's also involved with reflexes as well, and we'll do that later on. So the structure of the spinal cord, you can see on this rather complicated diagram we've got in front of you. It goes from the brain stem at the top all the way down to your tailbone, essentially at the bottom. And at each point here, this hard bone that goes around the vertebrae here, which allows for a bit of movement, so the spine isn't completely rigid, protects the inner sensory pathways. So we've got nerves running up and down the entire spine and then branching off at different points here to do different jobs. Roughly speaking, it's organised, so stuff that comes off at the top of the spinal cord, right at the top, controls parts of the body that are at the top. And as you go down, the nerves branch off and control those other ones. So the actual structure itself, you've got the sensory nerves here, and you've got your motor nerves here. We're going to do about sensory and motor nerves next lesson. And then the nerves that come off here come off the different pathways, both down the spinal nerve that you can see on this diagram here. There we go. And the sensory ones and the motor ones come off this side. The same for the other side of the body, going from the other side there. Now, obviously, if the spinal cord gets damaged, it's a big deal. So usually what happens in accidents where you have damage to the physical damage to the spinal cord, it snaps. And at that point, anything that's below it doesn't work. There are some treatments to try and reattach them, but it's incredibly difficult, and they don't regenerate for a reason which we'll go into now, actually. So for cells to regenerate, you need stem cells. There are no stem cells in the spine, in the spinal column. So there are no cells that can redifferentiate it and remake the nerves in the spinal cord. If you have no messages traveling up from the brain back down, you can't control or sense things in your lower parts of the body. So depending on where the spinal cord gets snapped or damaged, that depends the level of paralysis you have. So this diagram shows roughly what happens. So the blue area of the body here, 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 and here is what is paralyzed. So if that means that you can't move them and you get no feeling back from them. So we've got here, if you break right at the bottom in your lumbar region of the spine, here you have paraplegic, an L1 because it's the lumbar region and it's vertebrae number 1. So you'll lose feeling in your legs and you won't be able to control your legs. The further up you go, as you can see, the more of your body is completely paralyzed. So right up in the neck, which is the most dangerous place to sever, you can actually become completely quadriplegic. Now, quadriplegic is where you have no movement in arms or legs or your body. Now, while I said there was no innate stem cells that can regenerate in the spinal cord to sort of repair that damage, there are some techniques being developed that involve injecting certain types of stem cells in. However, this is very much in its infancy. It has shown to have some promise, but it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who is paraplegic or tetraplegic or quadriplegic will recover. So if we have a look at an exam style question, one might be something like this. Suggest how stem cells could be used to treat spinal cord injuries. So because it's a suggest question, you'll need to be applying your knowledge to this situation. So what knowledge do you have already about stem cells, and what knowledge do you have already about the spinal cord? So you'll need to put those two together and come up with a reason to justify your answer. So you might want to be talking about individual stem cells being grown into differentiated nerve cells. You might want to be talking about those having to be injected into the right area, given the right conditions to grow. You might have to be talking about this is necessary because there are no natural undifferentiated stem cells that can produce those nerve cells in the body. So it has to be a therapy that's added to try and repair the damage that's been caused. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of the spinal cord and some of the injuries that can take place to it. See you soon. Cheers.